Well, good morning. Good to be back with you folks. I learned something today, Pastor.
Okay.
I learned, sound guys will always, kind of instruct the speakers how to hold the microphone and don't hold it down here and don't get it too close. And I've always struggled with that. But your brother, right, that was sitting next to you, the big guy with the hat on, I saw what he does. He takes his thumb. He holds the microphone and he puts his thumb out, and then he just does that, and that locks it right in the right spot right there. And I learned that, so I'm going to try that today right there. So as long as this doesn't look weird to you, I'll be switching over from, I can do it in either hand. I'm amphibious. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Don't hold that against me. I got out as soon as possible. Some of you know my back story. You know that I'm an adopted kid. I was blessed. God intervened in my life early on, pulled me out of that home, this tragic home, South Side. Both my brothers were dead by the age of 17, and sisters drug addicts. But God reached in there, and through a Christian mailman, and my mom knew him as the only Christian that she had ever known. She says, "Harry, if you will take this child, I'll give birth to this child." And so I wind up not with him, but with his daughter and son-in-law, who was this wonderful, wonderful Christian family. Very, very conservative Christian family. I grew up conservative, okay? We didn't play cards in our house. Anybody else grow up that way? Right? Okay, yes, ma'am, right there. We didn't even play old maid cards, and people say, why was that? Well, because somebody could drive past your house at 55 miles an hour, see through the front window, you in the kitchen playing old maid. They wouldn't know it was old maid. They would think it was poker, and if you're playing poker, you're probably gambling, and we all know that gambling leads to premarital dancing, right there, and so... But the neat thing about that house, you didn't come into that house without hearing about Jesus. I mean, it was a Jesus. They were Baptist folks, but they were Jesus Baptist, okay? All right? You just didn't go. I have so many memories of coming in and seeing, this was back when we used to have salesmen that would go door to door. And, this was before Amazon brought it to you. The salesman would go door to door. And I'd look down and I'd see a guy working his way down the block. And I'm going, we're a poor family. We aren't going to buy anything, but you're going to get saved today. so I was used to seeing mom and dad kneeling down at the coffee table and people giving their lives to Jesus. And I remember one time a funeral plot, what do they call the plot, the ground, is that funeral plot? What is it? Cemetery plot salesman. Yeah. And when I found out, I thought, oh, that's just too easy right there. This guy has no chance of getting out of here a heathen. And he gave his life to the Lord and went home that night and brought his wife back to our house. Wow. And she gave. So that's the kind of house that I lived in until I was 12 and a half. Okay. Yeah. Then at 12 and a half, my father had some horrible things go wrong. He was an auto mechanic, and one of those big hydraulic lifts fell on him. And they couldn't fix him up, so they started medicating him with Valium and Darvocet and Percocet, the opioids of the day. Shortly after that, he was at a traffic light and he was rear-ended. Long story there, but another 3, almost 4 months in the hospital there. And my father, who was this wonderful man of God, man of faith, became a Christian drug addict. Bipolar, angry, would change, would flip-flop from happy to in a moment's notice, very violent, angry. There were times when he would, I remember one time specifically that he was angry because of the color of shoe polish, and it just set him off. And he threw the shoe polish out the door, and then we're moving down the road at 65 miles an hour, and he grabs my feet and grabs my shoes and throws them out the window and aims the car at the tree and says, "I'm going to kill us all." That can wear on you as a kid.
Yeah. So I think all of us probably have similar exposure in our life to that level of just trauma. Not all of us, many of us. How did you kind of manage through that? How did you move out of that season emotionally?
Well, you're so right, Stephen. Pastor Stephen. It's not the level of trauma. All of us have hurts and all of us have pains, And it doesn't, we don't sit in a room and go, okay, who can top that pain?
Yeah.
Because hurts can be at all different levels. And in my world, what it did for me is I saw this bipolar, and I didn't quite understand it. But over the next 10 years of seeing this abuse in my home, I've got to be honest with you, Pastor, I became bitter.
Yeah.
I became bitter and angry and mad, honestly, mad at God. Man of God, and very much into a situation where this man that had rescued me, he and his wife had rescued me, I now have a livid, vivid hatred of him. It can happen. You know, it's hatred slides in. Someone can do something for so long that you forgive and you forgive, and then you start to forgive with exceptions, and then you just start to get sick of it, and then you can move on to hatred. And unfortunately, that happened in my life.
Yeah. Wow.
God has a way. There's a verse in the Bible. Do y'all use those?
Occasionally.
I don't know if it's in the Message, but it's in the old one, you know. It's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. And I'll bet when I started, I bet probably 90% of the people in the room here can finish it, okay? It's, for we know that all things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. It's interesting, it didn't say that all things were good. If there's one thing that even the life of Christ, the Son of God, his life taught us, is that all things are not good. Yeah. The Bible says, and it is proved out in our lives, that it rains on the just as well as the unjust.
Yeah.
And we wonder sometimes, boy, I shouldn't go here, but we used to have an old song that we sang, farther along we'll know all about it. Remember that song? Farther along we'll understand why. Cheer up, my brother. It's kind of a bluegrass tune. What you do is you put your teeth together and sing through the cracks. And the more cracks you got, the better you can sound, okay? Right there. And but there's the second verse in it said this. We don't understand why we're living right, but yet others are living wrong. And the verse actually says, but they're never molested, though in the wrong. And first of all, I said that's horrible that we as Christians are wishing that upon people who are wrong.
Yeah.
But we all know what it's like to hurt. I tell people this. It started with my wife, and I wish you could meet her because then I wouldn't have had to fly. I'm sorry, that was a Freudian slip. I said that out loud. I'm sick of flying after 3.5 million miles. Freudian slip, you know what that is. It's when you meant to say, you didn't want to say something and you blurted it out. I had that happen at Thanksgiving. I meant to say, pass the potatoes, and I said, I hate you, you ruined my life. But anyway, I'm sorry, tonight's the comedy. It's serious. My wife says, when you're sharing with other people, whether that's in a third world or even here, don't tell them about your trophies because most of us don't have that many. Yeah. Tell them about your scars because every one of us can relate to that. And so here I am growing up in this home, and I'm learning to do comedy because I learned when Dad was laughing, he wasn't punching and screaming and hollering. I learned to sing. Why? Because when Dad was singing, he wasn't punching and screaming and hitting Mom. And see, I didn't know that God was doing in the midst of that this great work in my life that would one day be my life. It would one day be how I made my living. It would be one day how we would plant a mission to rescue girls in the Dominican Republic. And so with what's going on in your life, as I want to share with people, hey, I know it hurts. I'm not downplaying any of the hurt, but please understand this, that for those of us who are loving God and we're called according to his purpose, is that God has promised to work in that to make something beautiful. Remember that old Gaither song? You probably know it. Something beautiful, something good. All my confusion he understood. All I had to offer him was brokenness and strife. But he made something beautiful of my life. You know, wow. That's what he wants to do with us. That's what he wants to do.
You know, I think as believers, we can easily get into this mindset of, I'm following Jesus to avoid pain. And the truth is, he takes you head on into it. We're following Jesus not to avoid pain, but to have a remedy for pain, the same pain that everybody goes through, similar pains that everybody goes through. The only difference between us and the unbeliever is we know how to go through it instead of getting stuck in it. And I think a lot of believers get stuck in it because they think, I'm supposed to live a life without pain. You're supposed to live a life with the pain, leaning on Jesus. And that's a whole nother world, you know. But once you take it off the plate, off the goal list, I should say, of living a life with no pain, you're living in reality now. You know, it's not realistic to think, I'm never going to have an argument, I'm never going to have disagreement, I'm never going to have somebody get upset with me. That's just not real. The only way to do that is to live by yourself, and then there's a lot of pain that comes with that, because then you just got yourself, right? But then we got to move out of pain. And I think one of the things that Jesus offers to us, and the gospel of Jesus offers, which no other belief system offers for us as believers, is we have this dynamic in our faith called forgiveness. And if you're not good at forgiving, you're going to get stuck in a rut. And so there probably was a time where you had to forgive. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. You know, you bringing up that word, there is fewer, more powerful words, maybe none, in our language than forgiveness. I mean, it's what separates Christianity from every other religion. It's what separates Christianity from Judaism. Judaism is based in an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you, and I'm going to hurt you worse. Or I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me because I know you would do that to me. And Jesus comes along and he says, you're to love those that hate you. You're to pray for those who despitefully use you. How countercultural is Jesus? People go, oh, I love Jesus, I don't love the church. I want to say, no, let's be honest with you. If you met him, you wouldn't like him, because he's teaching us to be countercultural. For me, here I am growing up in this mess. My mom gets cancer. She dies. My father has a stroke. I'm the only child. And God saw fit to take this man that I hated and plant him in my wife and I's life to be his caregivers for 13 years of showering and changing this man. Of every day getting up and taking my TV tray and sitting in his bedroom and doing my work with him right there. He lost his ability to walk. He lost his ability to talk. And people will ask me sometimes, Pastor, they'll say, did your father ever get to come to you and apologize? No, never. Not one time was I ever able to hear from my father, son, I'm so sorry. I was a drug addict. But God took this stroke that he has to get him off of his drugs, put him in the house, because now the healing that had to happen was not just his body, but it was mine. See, I needed healing too. He was a drug addict. I was a non-forgiveness addict. I was a hatred addict. And, I could still go out and preach and sing and talk about the goodness of God, but you bring up my father and something inside me would twist and turn. But what God did, plant him in my house long enough for me to begin to start to forgive him. He couldn't say words, but he would look across at me. And when you work with somebody who's unable to communicate, you'll understand this. You get to the place where you can look at them in the eyes and you can know what they're thinking. You can know what they want. You can go, Dad wants some water right now. Dad's hungry right now. And in those times, God was able, 13 years, God was able to take and bring me from a point to hatred, to a point of forgiveness, to the next point, to re-love again. And now I can sit there and talk about my father, talk about the bad stuff, but I can remember the goodness of God of those good days. And also see that this is what the enemy does. He comes to kill and steal and destroy. And sometimes this kind of garbage happens even within the church and within the church family. And Pastor, I got to say one thing, and then I'll go back. I tend to hog the newscast. Okay, that's right. But maybe you're out there, and maybe you're saying, "But Mike, you don't know what he did to me." And let me just say this. Yes, I understand that. Forgiveness does not mean that you have to walk back and put yourself into an abusive situation. Okay? It doesn't mean you have to, all of a sudden, we go back into the mess, back into the prison, back into the oppression. I'm not saying that. But sometimes you have to forgive people at a distance. Okay? Because you want to be able to stay in that forgiveness. But here's what I know. There are folks in this room who've been abused, beat up mentally, physically, sexually. And I'm saying this to you. No matter what your future communication is with that person, for your own health, for your own growth, for your own discipleship, of truly saying, I am a follower of Jesus, you must learn to forgive.
You know, I think we've talked about forgiveness so many times, and I was telling Mike before the service, we're probably going to talk about forgiveness. I usually work it in there every 5 services because it's something that's a regular practice. It's a regular practice in our life. And how do you know when you've reached a place of finality in forgiving? I don't think you ever do. I think you learn how to get better and better and better at it, forgiving again and again. Listen, God has been forgiving humanity since its inception. Many of us will leave here today, and by the time we get to tonight, closing your eyes, you're going to ask God to forgive you for something. And guess what he's going to do? Forgive you. He's going to forgive you. Well, Stephen, people are going to take advantage of it just as much as you have. You need to forgive. And we were talking about the Lord's Prayer earlier, and it's the only part of the Lord's Prayer where there's some reciprocation to what God is giving. Like he feeds us daily bread, he gives us counsel, he directs us, he charges us to build the kingdom. But the only thing that he asks in reciprocation is, if you want to be forgiven, you must first forgive. And kind of moving forward here, it's not just forgive and that's it. You cannot be the fullness of who you are until you get out of that rut of unforgiveness and bitterness, because it poisons every part. And this is kind of how I see it. If I have unforgiveness, let's say it's a friend of mine of a certain ethnicity or whatever, male, whatever, then the enemy is going to work to keep bringing that person image into my life, because he knows it's the button to push. And it will keep me from moving forward in life. So if I've been abused by a man, abused by a woman, abused by this people group or that people group, and I keep it in my heart and I don't release it, what happens is the only person I'm damaging or holding back is me and the will that God has for my life. And the way to release it is just, some people are like, well, how do you forgive? I know it's going to be really hard. Here's how you forgive. You say it. God, I forgive. I forgive. You say it with your mouth. They hurt me, and I forgive. Because with the mouth, confession is made first, and with the heart, man believes. So the more I say I forgive, and not in a deceptive way, not in just a vain repetition, but intentionally in my heart, when those feelings of anger, maybe it's an ex-wife, maybe it's an ex-husband, maybe it's a child that's hurt you, when those feelings come in, you have to say out of your mouth, I forgive. I forgive. It's the only ability God has given us with the power that it has that we're replicating of his nature. He forgives. He forgives. I mean, think about it. I know this is kind of a huge paradigm view, but God forgives daily those that killed his son. God forgives daily those that killed his son. And many who live, how shall I say it, somewhat a sense of vanity, discarding the cost that it cost him to forgive, yet he still chooses to forgive. And the reason for forgiving is not just so you'll feel better, it's to move you out of the rut onto a pathway of where God has you going. All of us, every one of us, Mike, me, you, everybody here, God has a destiny. And it's not so you can be on American Idol. God has a destiny so you can change the lives of others. But you cannot fulfill that destiny wholly. Like you were saying, you can do it in part. You can be preaching church after church, message after message, and yet inside that, and probably lack of a better word, but that demon is still there, turning, waiting for bitterness to come out. And so kind of fast forward in your life, Mike, tell us about as God was pulling you out of this rut of unforgiveness, healing came, you moved forward, but then you had some other critical decisions. I remember you told me a story at the beginning of your ministry time with Cups Missions. You had a great career. You were moving along, just living the American dream. Tell us about that and kind of that critical decision point.
Well, I had just been on American Idol. I got beat out by a 5-year-old girl singing Memories. I'm thinking, memories of what, when you were 4? Following the Lord is not always easy. In fact, it rarely is. Jesus talked about his own life, and he says the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Jesus was homeless in many ways. And God calls all of us to be people who are transient within our calling. To be used of him. The transition for me, I want to comment on something you said just a second ago. So good, so powerful. The moment for me was, God didn't release me to ever tell this story about my father, the second part, until about 2 years ago. And it happened when I had messed up my knee. This kneecap is cracked. It looks like a spider web. I was in therapy, and 9 months in therapy, gained over 30 pounds until they found out we got to go do surgery. And so frustrated with this, here I am every day having to do these exercises that required me doing repeated things for 60 seconds. And 60 seconds is about the length of the Lord's Prayer, and I began to pray that, and over again, thinking and processing and understanding forgiveness and coming to that point of forgiveness. But then I'm in my office, and a guy walked in, and he said, "Hey, Pastor so-and-so," I'm not going to mention his name because that would be gossip. I'll tell you later so you can pray more effectively. Came in my office and he said, "Pastor so-and-so is having his 25th year anniversary in ministry." Now you have to understand, this was the same Pastor so-and-so who 30 years ago had stolen $200 from me. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but back when he took it, it was a big deal, okay? And I've always just kind of, every time his name would come up, and it just kind of like that. And he goes, "He's having his anniversary. I knew that you would want to give to his gift." What you talking about, Willis? In my mind, I didn't say anything out loud, but in my mind I went, how about if I just give a little piece of paper and say, "Here's $25 off what you still owe me." And God spoke. Now, some of you hear audible voices fantastic. For me, he speaks in my heart, my mind, in truths of conscience. And God said, your problem is you want to preach about forgiveness and you've got a brother that you haven't forgiven. You write out a check for what he stole from you and give it to him to forgive him. And I'm like, what's plan B? He said, I told you what to do. I said, could I get a verification text? I mean, if Apple wants one, I can ask. Folks, it's not just the big things. Driving down the road, how quickly we get angry with that person in front of us that doesn't drive the way we think they ought to do. Do we pull away from there and then all of a sudden we shift back to shout to the Lord on the earth, let us sing power. Forgiveness is not just about the big things, because if you can't master the little things, you won't be able to compete in the bigger things. And so when you're saying, what does it take to do that? It takes a decision. You said, speak it out. Yeah. Speak it out. Some of you today, when it's time for us to close, which is very quick now because this water is warm. I do well with cold water, but I'm 63. I've got 7 minutes. As we close, we're going to sing a song, and we're all going to have a choice. We can sit there and we can say, oh, yep. Some people in this room really need to forgive folks. Some of us, though, know that when I was talking about my father, someone in your life came to your mind. God brought that to you. And you know that there's somebody that every time, unfortunately, it might be a child who said, I hate you, I wish you were dead. But you're stopped right now in your faith. You don't even understand it. We're usually blind to our own problems. And you are stopped right now in your growth because you're holding unforgiveness. And today you need to do more than just acknowledge that there's unforgiveness. But you need to today speak this out loud. Father in heaven, I am forgiving them. You have forgiven me. I am forgiving them. And I am going to walk in forgiveness. And then for the next, maybe during this 15 day, 20, you got a 7 version of it? Okay. Hour. You need to revisit that and revisit forgiveness. Some of you may have to get up every morning and say, Lord, forgive me, but I forgive so-and-so. Your list may be 10 people long or 10 pages long, I don't know. But you need to forgive them until you have forgiven them. Did that make sense?
That's good.
Yep. Yeah.
It's so good. I think one of the scenes that kind of is imprinted on my mind the first time we went to the Dominican, of course, y'all know Mike, and I'll talk more about that tonight, the Cups missions, is we went on one of our days on the mission trip, small little teams, and we walked around and knocked on doors. For those that had doors, most of them had curtains, knocked on doors and visited with families there in the Dominican. And just to kind of give you the backdrop, the poverty level is so abject that when you get to that level of poverty, of not knowing if you're going to eat today, the roof over your head is a metal scrap, maybe a pallet, maybe water come through every rain, dirt on the floor. The poverty is so abject, and it's not just a financial burden that they carry, but there is a moral burden, a very broken moral burden that community lives under. And so with that, almost every child, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, almost every child has been molested. Almost every child. Boy, girl, every child. Because there's no sense of purpose, destiny, getting out of this hole, so we're all stuck in this hole thinking about ourselves. And to inject the gospel of Jesus into that realm, forgiveness is the only thing for many years that you're teaching to forgive. Because they're still living with the abuser. They're still living with the abusers in the house. How do you get them out? There's no way there's not enough room to take them all out of their house and put them in the Cups mission. There's not enough room to take them out of that. And if you went around killing all the offenders, that's everybody. So how do you fix that? And back to what I was saying, the impression, that the image burned into my memory as we were going door to door. We were visiting all these houses. And of course, all the men are gone during the day. So it's all women and children at home. Education is not a big thing. And so a lot of them aren't in school. The few that can afford it, they're gone. But there's moms, and many of them, more kids than they can handle, more mouths than they can feed. And we're going from door to door praying for families. And they tell us their need through the translator. And as they're telling us their needs and we're praying for them, I remember, I think it was Ranso and his group was there, and they went into this house and they were praying, and Mike was with us. And I was outside, like a good preacher, delegate everything and do nothing. I was outside watching. And as they were praying for them, Mike was standing outside praying. And I could just see the avenue that Mike had opened up for us would not have been possible if he hadn't lived in this forgiveness thing. Because every house we were praying for an abused victim or an abuser. Every house. And if that got stuck in his heart, an inability to forgive abusers, you'd have never made it at Cups. You'd have never made it in the Dominican. It'd have been impossible. And I'm saying that to say, God has a great destiny for us all. But we can't reach that place unless we're living this life of forgiving well. And the enemy knows how to get in. He does. He uses people that are broken to break us. Like I tell us in our school of ministry all the time, broken people break other people. And that's not an indictment against them. It's just to say, listen, the person that's hurting you, they're hurting you because they are hurt. They're broken, and they've probably been broken for a long time. But yet, no matter how long you've been broken, when you walk into this place of forgiving well, sometimes it just starts off, God, I forgive them. I don't even know how, God, but I forgive. I'm going to quit rehearsing what I'm going to do to them, rehearsing what I'm going to say to them. I'm going to forgive. I'm going to forgive. And the more I say it, it gets in my heart. The more I believe it, then the more I say it, the more I believe it. And then you get to this place of no matter what people do to you, you're not a doormat that can be run over, but you are so strong that you're not going to allow their brokenness to break you. You're going to forgive well. In fact, you can look beyond their pain and love them out of it. Love them and hold them to a place of, I love you, but you're not going to hurt me. Because I'm going to keep forgiving. I'm going to keep forgiving and drawing boundaries and saying, hey, this is healthy, and we're going to keep moving forward. That's where we want to end up. But listen, all that to say this. God has a destiny for every one of us. And the moment you start in your destiny, every significant area of unforgiveness, that's going to confront you right away. It's going to hit you. And so, Mike, tell us a little bit about what happens in the Dominican, in that world of what Cups Missions is doing, and why you need these guys, all of us, to come and be a part of it.
a story that's immediately coming to mind. We were in the pregnancy center that's in the Dominican Republic. We have schools. We take girls and give them a trade so that they don't have to go out and sell themselves, so they don't have to quickly jump and to find the first guy who comes along who will possibly help them survive. And along with a lot of discipleship programs, multiple churches. We're also in Malawi, Africa, with a medical program there, 35-bed hospital with a doctor and 2 nurses, a pastor's school there. We just graduated pastor number 174, I believe, from that. And we're building a program in Mexico, an orphanage program and a pregnancy program there in Milpa Alto, because that's where the cartels are actually taking children, and they're taking these street children, and they're killing them to harvest their body parts to sell for body part needs around the world. And you just hear something like that and you just can't walk away from that. So all of these needs, we were sitting there one time and someone asked the question, well, rubber meets the road. How are we helping these girls? And I went over to the window and I pointed to a house and I had them all look, and I said, you know, in that house is a young lady by the name of Jamilka. She walked into this clinic at 13 and pregnant. 13 and pregnant. And we start to do some investigation, our teams, the workers there, and they find out that she's pregnant to the next door neighbor. And the next door neighbor we do the investigation. We find out that the mother has been selling Jamilka to the next door neighbor since she was 8 years old. And we can't do anything about it because the next door neighbor is one of the lieutenants on the police department. And all we can do is confront it so that he knows that we know, and hopefully that it will stop. Their HRS, their community services, can't really do anything about it. The mother needs Jamilka, the oldest child, to watch the other children in the home so she can go out and work. It's a single parent family. What are we doing? We're throwing our hands around this young lady and promising her this, that God will turn her tragedy into triumph if she will let him. And it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's not just you open up the magic box and everything is fixed. But we've promised her Romans 8:28, that God can work together all things, even tragedy, for good. Jamilka, we're going to hold you and we're going to hug you and we're going to love you and help you love Jesus and help you experience his love. And in that, your life is going to be changed. Wonderful folks from around the country are going to provide a couple dollars, and in our case, it's 75 cents a day, takes Jamilka and gets her into all of our programs. We're going to get you through this and get you out the other side, not because we are good, but because he is great. Not because we're wealthy, but because he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And my people have learned that we're not working for this life anyway. It's all up against that day when we stand before him. And we want to hear him say, well done, well done. I don't want to hear him say, pretty good, pretty good. I don't want to hear him say, slacker, okay? Because in this, it's not like T-ball. It's not, we're just here to have fun. So we're here to win. We're here to win in Jesus' name. We're here to conquer. We're here to put our foot down on the head of the serpent and see victory in Jesus. Yeah.
Tara, if you'll go ahead and help us out, we're going to close this morning. When I was with Mike, I don't remember which year it was. I think I've been down there twice, maybe 3 times. We're going back this June to the Dominican. We already have a team already assembled, and hopefully we can get everybody in. We have probably a good 15, 20 people going. But I remember one of the days that we were there, a story like Jamelka. There was another young lady, I'm trying to remember her name, but one of the workers in the Cups Missions, and we went to her house. And of course, when Mike said, hey, we're going to go to her house, immediately I did what you did. You picture a house, brick walls, siding, something like that, with a roof, a floor, a kitchen, a bathroom, those kind of things. So we're going to go to her house, and we went into the slums of that region. And we walked down this very steep slope, and as we were walking down, there was water trickling in a little kind of a ditch-looking thing next to us, kind of splashing everywhere. And of course, it wasn't Mike, it was one of the other teams says, hey, don't touch that, that's the sewer going down. Don't step in that. And of course, it's bottoming out into this region where this people live. And they're in shacks with tin walls and pallets. And we're going into it, and I'm thinking, I thought we were going to go see a house where this young lady that Mike had told us about and the team had told us about is phenomenal healing story of her life. But we walk into a little shack, cardboard, metal walls, pallet walls, and all of them live in a one-room house, essentially, a one-room house. And the first question you and I ask when we get to a house like that is, where's the bathroom? Well, there is no bathroom, right? They have to go into the woods for that. They have to go to the part of the city, village area where they go to the bathroom. And as we're in there, and he starts telling us the story of this young lady, how she would every day wake up in this shack, go to the edge of the street to where the bus picked up, and ride for hours to get an education. Something had happened that led her to a life of seeking Jesus. To not get out of that community, but to stay in it and to make disciples. She was a beautiful young lady. She came out very polished. You'd have thought, I can't get my clothes ironed, and I live in a real house. She was so polished, came out. I forgot how many languages she spoke, 3 languages. She was working on her degree in college, and she's wanting to go into helping with Cups Missions, and all the, Mike will tell you the story later, but just phenomenal. But she was coming out of everything that we talked about, that culture, which tells me she had to practice this discipline of forgiving well. And I say that to us today because we can always somewhat look down and think, well, they need help. But you really need to look up and think, I need help. To live like that young lady who'd been through so much horrible things. I'm sure we didn't hear the half of her story of the oppression, discrimination, violation, evils done to her and many like her in the Dominican. How do they do it? Forgive. They forgive. Forgiving well. And listen, forgiving is not painless. It is the most painful thing you will do emotionally, forgiving. If you're doing it and it doesn't hurt you in some way, you're probably not doing it right. Here's the reward of forgiveness. Forgiveness, listen, will always cost the forgiver more than the receiver. It always costs you more to forgive. It cost God his one and only Son. And not just a casual death, the most torturous death as we know, to forgive us. I have 4 sons, and you can't have any of them. God gave his one and only Son. And here's the crazy part about forgiveness, that you will not experience until you do it well, until you do it right. Forgiveness brings more joy to the forgiver than the forgiving. When you truly forgive, you get the joy out of it. It does something to heal you no matter who you're forgiving. In fact, many times the people you're forgiving don't ever fully realize what they're being forgiven of, just like you don't fully realize what you were forgiven of when he forgave you. We all have to come back to this place of, I cannot go on in my walk with Jesus, the fulfilling of my destiny, until I deal with this unforgiveness. And the only way to deal with it is to forgive. To forgive. Jesus said, not Stephen said, Jesus said, it is impossible except that offenses should come. That's King James. The Message translation, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt a lot. In fact, Jesus says it like this, and I'll close with this. I send you out as sheep among wolves. Guess who usually wins in that scenario? Sheep among wolves. I send you out as sheep among wolves. And the only way the sheep survives is keeping the shepherd close among the wolves. And forgiveness is how we keep the shepherd close. Bitterness is how you walk away from his nearness. This morning as we close, I'm asking you, and maybe you've done this 100 times, but listen, you got to do it again sometimes. Because if you still feel that brokenness inside, pain is telling you this is not fixed. There's still some forgiveness that needs to happen, right? Sometimes I've forgiven people like, God, I'm going to forgive them. But can